Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order, led by the pledge by Councilman Isakson. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brendan, can you call the roll, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Present.
Councilwoman Carr. Present. Councilman Froelich.
Present.
Councilman Isakson.
Present.
Supervisor Salafi.
Present. Any correspondence? Okay. We're a couple minutes early, but I will start the public hearing on proposed local law 4 of 2020 entitled Property Tax Levy 21 to add to section 4-7 to the Town Code, Chapter 4. Brendan, can you read the announcement, please?
Please take note, this was in the paper on the 28th of October. Please take notice that there will be a public hearing on local law 4 of 2020 for the following proposed amendment to the Town of Milton Town Code, adding Chapter 4, Section 4 through 7, to be held on November 5th, 2020 at 7:05 p.m. at the Town of Milton Town Community Center, 310 North Line Road, Alston Spa, New York, 12020, and by Zoom. All interested parties are invited to attend and be heard. And then it's got the local law in the end.
Thank you, Brendan. Having opened the public hearing, microphone is yours.
Could you give a further clarification and explanation of what this local law is all about, if I don't understand that?
This local law, if passed, allows us to override the tax.
He's speaking to the mic.
I'm sorry, John. If this law is passed tonight, it allows us to override the tax cap of 2%.
So why do you need to override the tax cap?
We may or may not do. This is just a safety net should it happen that we need to.
So is this in anticipation of a tax increase of over 2%?
No, it's in anticipation of the future. Just an unknown, John. We have to be ready for anything.
Yep.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? Okay.
Yes.
I got her. Trying.
Are the pictures up? Because I just got a text message, there's no picture.
Well, I don't know. It appears we are. Miss Jackson? Hang on just a second, Carrie. Hang on. Try it again. Go ahead.
Good evening, this is Carrie Jackson, 924 MacArthur Drive. I just want to voice my opinion in opposition of this local law. I believe that everyone in our town does a fantastic job. However, I don't feel that this is the right time for any raises at all. We do not know what the future is going to hold. Winter is not looking good. Cases are going up, and I do believe that the economy is going to get weaker instead of stronger. And as much as I would love to see everyone get an increase in salary, I do not think that this is the time or the year to do that. I think you are elected to represent the people who voted you into office. And I think for the best interest of all the townspeople, that the tax cap that the budget stay under the tax cap to protect the people in the town. Still, some of us may be losing our jobs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, go ahead.
I just spoke. Almost there.
Oh, I thought that was Bridget, my apologies. Ms. Herbst, you're up.
Thank you, Supervisor. Bridget Herbst, 586 Admiral Boulevard. I would also like to say that I am opposed to this local law. I think that at a time when the county is seeing the highest unemployment ever recorded, the town should seriously consider about how else they can fix the budget rather than passing on this tax burden on to taxpayers that may or may not also be facing future budget falls in their personal expenses. So I would just like to say that while I understand that you're doing everything you can to stay under the tax cap, I think that what if is a slippery slope. And I feel that rather than doing this, all concessions should be made to stay under the tax cap, including giving raises to employees.
Thank you. Mr. Rossi, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Frank Rossi Jr., 63 Saratoga Ave, Part B, also with that. First, just wanted to address the two prior, the person spoke to two prior to me. You represent all residents of Milton, not just the people voting for you at the end of the day. I think that's the biggest fallacy that you're involved in all the time, too. And no matter who wins what election, we're learning this the hard way right now nationally. You represent all of us as somebody that's here, you know that, as well as the rest of the board members. But as a township, we need to become a little bit more on top of that fact and stop some of the slings and arrows about elections and who represents who based off of. My thought about raises is that they need to be consistent if they're going to happen at all. Some of the things that we've seen suggest anything but that's going on. I'm sure the comptroller's a good guy and a hard worker. He's being compensated a decent amount. And anybody else that's been starting numbers that are in excess of people who have been there for a long time, the rebalancing should be done as a whole, not this person getting this person getting that, and raises all over the place at the end of the day. This needs to be consistent and kept under the tax cap if at all possible. I think we can walk each other at the same time in this town. Here's our chance to prove it by doing the right thing for everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Judah.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor. I just want to second everything that Mr. Rossi just said. I'm fully in support of that. And I just need to speak out against raising the tax cap at this time because I have not really seen evidence that there is a comprehensive understanding of what's going on in the budget, nor has there been a really good explanation to the public as to what's going on with the budget and why we would need to be exceeding the 2%. If that had been able to be provided, I certainly recognize fiscal realities and there's a lot going on in the town with the roof and everything that's going on with COVID. We deserve to be paid. We have to take care of ourselves during the winter and our leaf pickup and all of that. So there could be a reason to raise it, but it just has not been demonstrated, and there's been too many issues raised that indicate that that this may not be a solid budget. I'm not sure if the step increases ever got put in there. There's just too many unanswered questions to be in support of people at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anna?
Good evening. Stop self-dealing government, focused on a few rather than us all. What? Can you hear me now? Stop self-dealing government, focused on a few rather than us all. Rebuild the tax reserves depleted because of fiscal foolishness. Stop overtaxing the village of Ballston Spa by restoring tax levels that correspond with services. I'd like to echo some of the previous statements that were made. In less than a month, between the tentative and the preliminary budget, the supervisors raised his raise 2%, as well as, according to the budget, the confidential secretary. However, according to the organizational meeting, the confidential secretary's salary is 20.08 cents an hour, which comes out to $41,776. If she's being raised to $45,683, that gives her a 9% increase. This leads me to wonder, now did somebody just slip this extra 2% in on the side to be a little slippery, or was this just an error? And if this was an error, then I'd like to bring the point up that if that's the error, then that would be the comptroller's error, who you are trying to raise, again, a 7.4%, as he's been here 4 months. I've also heard people say that, well, his salary isn't comparable to other people's salary in adjoining towns. And I'm going to pick on Dave Forbes because Dave is not here. The town of Milton has 88 miles of roads. Dave Forbes makes 70 grand a year. The town of Malta has 75 miles of roads. He gets paid $77,000 a year. The town of Ballston has 55 miles of road. He makes $90,000 a year. If you're going to try to get the salaries of your employees up, maybe it should be the people that have been here 20 plus years that have dedicated their life to this town in this county, not people that have been here 4 months to a year. When asking why the employees' morale is so low, maybe you just need to look at yourselves and figure that out. If you're giving yourselves raises, that's not leadership. Lead by example. Give your employees raise, and you need the 2%? Don't get a 2%. The county directors are not getting any raises this year, just the employees. So you're raising people's salaries and you're reducing highway services such as snow removal, leaf pickup, new equipment they need. So again, stop self-dealing government focused on the few rather than us all. The few being the new employees that you're bringing in over salary. Rebuild the tax reserves depleted because of fiscal foolishness. That pretty much speaks for itself. Stop overtaxing the village of Ballston Spa by restoring tax levels that correspond with services. There's nothing in this budget that says anything about reducing the tax levies. And I will remind you that these are the points that some of you just ran on less than a year ago when you wanted to be in this office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
Something I wanted to ask you.
Hang on a second. Use your microphone, Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is this on? What is the county giving it for their employees? What's the percent? Is it 2?
2.
Thank you.
Not for any directors or department heads. No, we get no raise.
Okay,
Good government.
thank you.
I have somebody who wants to speak, but they're not responding. Sharon, you have to unmute yourself. There you go. Okay, go ahead.
Sharon Licata, 4 Ichabod Lane. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to say that as a member of the budget committee, I felt the responsibility to make sure the budget for 2021 is reviewed extensively and honestly. I feel there is excess in the highway budget for overtime. I continue to do a phenomenal job, they truly do. The department has not spent that money the past 2 years, or on track to be under budget again this year. What that does is rolls that excess into the fund that can only be spent by the highway department, and not spread among the others. I'd rather see a more balanced budget and keep the taxes down. I would also like to see all COLA raises capped at 1.3%, which is what has been recommended by Social Security, and the only government organization I know that actually puts out the best one. As far as the raises for department heads or step raises, I know how to do that to people who know more about what they do. I hope that it is trust that they are responsible and watch our funds and take care of their own. Thank you.
Ms. Burton, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Maddie. I just wanted to say, listening to everybody here, first of all, sleeping court most of the time. I think it's pretty fiscally irresponsible if the board decides to raise a tax cap to increase expenses to employees, especially given the economic kind of the way it is now. So that's my 2 cents that I have.
Anyone else? Mary Ann. She went up first, John. I'm not ignoring you.
Mary Ann Morgan, Rock City Road, Ballston Spa. This is not a huge amount. In the youth program, we have a total of $57,500. Did we use that this year?
No, we didn't.
How are we going to use it next year?
Well, we're going to hope that,
The building is done and the construction will be out of the way, and where are you going to put the kids?
well, they'll use the pavilions like they have this year. Not this year, in the past.
With construction on the building going on?
Well, we're hoping to be done before the end of July.
You know, I'm hoping they'll take this out of the budget this coming year. The fairs are looking at not holding fairs. I realize the kids aren't cheated. It's really sad, but our taxpayers are kind of getting cheated too. There might be something that we can do to run the program if it turns around. Other towns charge a minimum amount. Maybe we could take up a collection and send them to another town.
A lot of towns don't. They charge like an extra fee on top of their fees for out-of-town residents. That could be something we could look at.
Yeah, so, I know 57,000 isn't huge, but what I was looking at is we needed to get, under the levy, 63,000. That'd be a help.
John?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused because initially you opened up the meeting with the agenda item of about passing a local law, and now are we into the public hearing for the budget?
No, this is the public hearing on the proposed local law. So
I hear people talking about the budget.
well, yes, sir.
Okay, so, well, can we address that agenda item first and then get into the budget?
Yes, we can. Anyone else on the tax cap? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We're ready for a motion. Do we want to have any discussion, or do you want to put this right to a motion? I'm open to suggestions. Well, judging public sentiment, I think we should not adopt the local law, and we will stay under the tax cap, whatever cuts need to be made. If anybody else has an opinion, I'll listen.
I agree with you. I just agree with what you're saying, so we should not.
No, Frank, try to turn it off. There you go.
I think we should take some more time and look at what's, I don't think we're ready to make any move tonight.
I'm with both of them. I've said right along I wasn't in agreement to go above this tax cap, and I think there's enough in this budget that we can find these cuts. It's been trimmed down to, I believe, the 63,000, and I think we can find a lot more than that to trim out of this budget.
I can understand everybody's sentiment. I also understand the reality of everything. And we have sat here now for this town board in the last 20 years and not repaired a building. And that's why we're in this problem. The problem is if you don't budget every year with a plan, you end up with big budget increases. Today, we still don't have a plan. That's the problem with this whole thing. I certainly looked at the tax cap, this giving us permission to raise the tax cap in case something came up of an immense surprise that we had no other choice. But we're going to sit here today and we're going to look at a highway garage that's falling down, has holes in the walls, has single pane windows. They run the heater 24/7 to maintain 50 degrees in that building. And we're going to tell our taxpayers that, boy, we're doing a great job because we're keeping it under the tax cap. So what year, I'm asking the town board, are we going to sit up here and be honest with our taxpayers and tell them that we've got buildings that need to be fixed? And this is going to cost us some money. I guess I'll leave it at that.
I'm looking at it as we have to be honest with our taxpayers at how we're spending their tax dollars right now. I don't think this is the year to go above the tax cap, and I think this is the year to cut and get our budget down as far as we can. And yes, John, if we can cut below that 83, then that extra money can be put aside for the garage or for the town hall or for planning for whatever we need. I realize we have not planned, we have not put aside a capital reserve for our building, and that's why we're in the position of bonding $1 million, which you also know I don't agree with. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen in the next year. As a conservative, it does concern me. Yeah, we can sit up here and say we're fine, but there's a lot of people out there that aren't, and those are the ones we're supposed to be looking out for.
I guess you missed my point. I'm not saying that we're fine. I'm saying that we don't have a plan. And we've sat here for the last 20 years saying that we can't raise taxes. And we got to cut the budget. And that's been the statement put forward by town board members here as long as I can remember. Certainly, when do you think it's going to be a good year to tell our taxpayers it's going to go up 20, 30 cents a thousand? Instead of raising it a little bit every year so you can plan for these future repairs. Certainly not next year when our supervisor is going to run for office. We'll be back here touting the same thing. We need to cut the budget because He's gonna be worried about not getting votes. And again, we're making a budget on a political statement.
And as you know, I don't play political games, okay? And if the taxes have to go up next year and we're in better economical condition here in this country, we can do it. We'll do it. Okay, but I think this year we have to be cautious. Yes, our sales tax is in good shape right now. We don't know where our state aid is coming in. We don't know where our revenue is coming in for obviously we can't rent this building. We don't know about the pavilions. We don't know gatherings. We don't know what we're going to be able to do in the next year. And I think those are all things we have to look at. Everybody's looking at the spending, nobody's looking at the revenue side. So.
I guess, and the one thing we haven't talked about on the revenue side, I'm glad you brought that up, is the planning board last week approved an active solar farm on Solomon Road. Along with that approval comes $100,000 from that company to the town. Why isn't that being put on the revenue side of this budget?
As soon as that's firmed up, I think it can be, but I also don't think we can use a one-time shot as a budget balancer. And maybe a good second portion of that should be put aside for our planning.
Well, everybody's saying how the pandemic has put everybody in a bind, and that's a one-time thing. I guess it is firmed up because at the end of next week, we will have $50,000 in our hand.
And we'll have another $50,000 by the end of December. But as Bart has said,
Mark, that was a condition of the approval given by the planning board that they would pay $100,000 to be paid this year, $50,000 to be paid within 10 days of approval, which is sometime towards the end of next week, and an additional other $50 is to be paid no later than. Apparently the money already came in.
The resolution, John Bartow is out of town. John Bartow is out of town, so the resolution won't be signed until he gets back, but the check has been received and Dave hasn't.
A bird in the hand, I guess.
and that's fine, that $100,000 will go great this year, but again, that's a one-time revenue source, and as someone who's been down to New York and taken the classes, John, one of the things they tell you is don't bank on one-time revenue sources. We're not going to have solar companies coming in here every year giving us $100,000. I have no problem using that $100,000 for next year. We're going to need that $100,000 for next year. And I know that I ran on balancing a budget. And I know I ran on not taking money out of the reserves. But that's not going to happen this year. So if I lied on my promises, then that's what you can go back and tell people, that I lied. Okay? But I didn't lie. We're in a jam that nobody saw coming, okay? And we're doing the best we can. And I have people calling me saying they're out of work. Their wife had their hours cut in half. And yes, John, you're right. This would be the headlines. Town of Milton raises taxes 10%. And everybody goes, oh my God, 10% is 6 cents. So which way do you want to sell it? Do you want to sell it as a 6-cent raise on your taxes? Or do you want to have people going out saying, we're raising taxes 10% and people are out of work? And you're right, for 20 years people haven't done the right thing here. But I've been told by employees that I can't blame people who aren't here anymore for things that didn't get done. It's not fair to them when they're not here to defend themselves. So I can't do that, John. I can't say, in the past, we haven't done this and we haven't done that. So we're trying to move along the best we can. And I agree with you. Next year, taxes are going to have to go up. And anybody who's listening or anybody who wants to call a reporter and say, yes, Benny's raising taxes next year, that's what I'm doing. And if the board doesn't want to raise taxes next year, that's fine. We'll take a vote, and if the budget gets voted down with the tax raise in it or over the tax cap, great, and we can start all over again. But we're looking at millions of dollars of projects, and you're right. We, the board, the town board, for many years hasn't planned for the future. But nobody saw 200,000 people dying either. Nobody saw people out of work. Nobody saw restaurants being closed and having only outdoor services. Nobody saw wearing masks every place they have to go. Nobody saw people only being 6 feet apart in this building instead of all of us being here, and including these people on Zoom who could be here and doing this.
I guess that's why my point was, the pandemic is a one-time thing, hopefully. And that's why I say take the one-time benefit and use it to offset the pandemic. I'm not saying that we're gonna put 100,000 from solar farms every year. What I am saying is, we've got 100,000 coming into us. And that should be used for the budget.
It will be, and now we're under the cap, so there's no need to have this local law. Is that what you're saying? That we're under the cap now, so we don't need to have this because we've got this $100,000?
Why not use the 100,000 towards our building project and reduce our bond? Why not? And reduce our indebtedness over the next 10 years.
I guess if you took $100,000 out of $1 million, what do we?
Down to 900.
Gets it down to 900. What would it actually save the taxpayer of payment per year?
That's what we have to look at.
So I understand making these gestures are all good. And Benny, you made a very valid point. With our tax rate going up, we've never taken the time to explain to our citizens here that a tax increase of such and such may only cost them $6 a year. And maybe they would have a different feeling about a tax increase if it was that minimum. But we've never ever done that. All we've ever said is we need to cut taxes and be under the tax cap. And that's why we're in this problem.
If we raise property, town taxes by 10% next year, that will get us an extra $88,000. The 2% tax rate gets us a grand total of $38,000.
With us as members of our community at this point in time, at least most of them live in the town of Milton. Thank you.
Ms. Burton, if you could unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I didn't have any comment.
Oh, okay, you had your hand up, so I didn't. All right, I'm looking around. Ms. Judah. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor. I didn't mention before, Michelle Judah, 34 Van Tassel Lane. Thanks for the opportunity to make some comments here. I have to say that I've been paying attention to the meetings, and Supervisor, I completely agree with some comments that you made a few meetings back in regards to, and at risk of, I'm a member of the public, so I guess I can talk about what other people have done in the past. Some really bad politically motivated behavior, I think, of previous supervisors and administrations in regards to putting tax cuts through that were not prudent. And this goes along with what Councilman Froelich has been talking about as well. You're facing a really difficult situation in terms of a budget, and obviously no one wants to go over a tax cap, you know, because of those actions that were taken previously. So if you can only raise things 2%, it's really difficult when there was some significant cuts done in the past that really didn't look to what our future needs were and making sure that we were well positioned. So I completely agree with that. I just want to reemphasize what I said earlier is that it's really imperative with the budget process that you be able to really fully explain, and I'm talking to the whole board here, really explain and justify what is in the budget. And for those of us who have been following along at home, at the community center. It just has not come across that the board as a whole has a good command of what is in the budget, what is in these lines, and how the budget goes together and what the opportunities might be for making some cuts. I also agree fervently with the comments that are being made here tonight and in the past. I think one of the Bogosian brothers had mentioned, this need that increases, and I'm not against there being increases for staff, but that rates of pay, as you're setting them and as you're determining what people are going to be paid, there needs to be some consistency about that. There needs to be some plan in place and some defendability about those types of things. You can't be just, setting rates that are inconsistent with other people, inconsistent, as Mr. Rossi is saying, with what is going on in other areas, other townships, other areas of the country. You have to be able to defend those. When there's discrepancies in rates of pay, you're putting the town at risk in the form of litigation. That somebody could come back and say, bring litigation, that they're being discriminated against or not being treated equally. So we really do need to look at that in the budget. In the budget as presented right now, those things seem to be out of line, out of whack, and not really, again, good explanations behind it that would protect us from those risks. And then finally, we've talked here tonight about revenue and expenses. It's come up at some other meetings. But what we really don't have to even weigh in on the budget as a public is a clear sense of what the fiscal status of the town is. Those fiscal reports are put on the agenda for the meetings. We don't get a fiscal report. I've asked previously, has 2019 been audited yet? Have we finished the audit on that? Where do we stand on that? We know that there was some accounting difficulties in the past, and that's one of the reasons that things were being, really audited to an extreme level to make sure that we weren't going to run into something where, a number that we're assuming is actually not the correct number we should be working with. We haven't had answers on that, and so it's really difficult to weigh in on the budget and whether it's sound and good for the town moving forward when there's so many, again, unknowns that we have. So, those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to read a question that we have from Carrie Jackson. Is anyone on the board aware that the city of Saratoga Springs is cutting their budget, including a 10% wage reduction in some departments and a 25% reduction in the DPW labor budget? Why can't the town of Milton take similar measures? Well, the city of Saratoga Springs has opted out of for many years, opted out of the county sales tax program. So when the track didn't open and SPAC didn't open and their restaurants were shut down, they had major revenue issues. $18–19 million they're short. So we can and probably will consider some of those measures, but nothing as drastic as a 25% reduction in workforce or 10% pay cuts for anyone. We're not anywhere near $19 million short or even a huge portion of our budget short. Thank you for your question. I think there's, no, I think we're done, okay. John, you had another question?
I just want to make a clarification on my past statements. That the highway department does a wonderful job in the town of Milton. I don't have any problem with the highway department. So I don't want to be misconstrued about we should be taking away their equipment. But the highway department also has to share in the problems that we are facing. We don't need to pave any roads next year. We don't need to buy any new equipment next year. You got to remember one big factor here. We don't know who our president is going to be next year. It does not look very good for Donald Trump right now, who built this economy, who gave us a booming economy. if Biden gets in, we are going to be looking at probably, as he said, a dark winter in a lot of ways. Because if this economy flops as a result of Biden going in, I don't have any great hopes and expectations that Wall Street is going to rally around Joe Biden. No way. So we need to be prepared for even perhaps more economic gloom and doom. We have to be prepared for that. And I don't disagree with you, John, that yes, we do have to plan. We got to put money away for these major improvement projects, absolutely. But we don't know what it's going to bring next year. There's a huge question mark next year. So going into next year, our budget really has to reflect that huge question mark. And it has to be really austerity. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one more person on Zoom.
Supervisor Bridget, again, 586 Maxwell Boulevard. I just want to reiterate everything that Ms. Judith said. I completely agree with her. I think the issue for me is that I feel that the board is not presenting a real understanding of what the budget is. I feel like we're getting different messages. It doesn't seem like the board fully understands the budget process. And some things seem, like I'll use the dog catcher as an example, inconsistent. So if I was looking at a budget and I needed to know whether to hire a full-time dog catcher or a part-time dog catcher, the first thing I would do would be to figure out how many dog catcher calls we get, how many do we get a day, how many do we get a night, how many per week, how many hours a week would we need a dog catcher. I feel like there was really a lack of a deep dive into things like that, and there's a lack of making decisions based on sound economic principles versus just, willy-nilly things that we should do. So I think before any cuts are made, before any increases are made, the board really needs to take a full deep dive into every single aspect of the budget and have a real understanding of every dollar amount and every dollar that's being spent. If we're going to need to cut at least 20% out of our budget next year, that's going to be a huge hit to the town, and spending any kind of money this year without any kind of reserve going forward is extremely irresponsible. I understand the predicament you're in. I understand that 2020 is not what anyone wanted it to be. And that said, I think every taxpayer in the town has had to take a real hard look at their life, their expenses, and everything going forward. And I think that it's the responsibility of the town board to do the same.
Ms. Jackson.
Hello, Carrie Jackson again, 924 MacArthur Drive. I just wanted to quickly give a different perspective. My very good colleague and friend runs the Snack Pack food donation program. It's a 503c separate from the Syracuse Springs City School District, but it does serve the students in the school district. And from March of this year to currently, the numbers of families that are given bags of food on Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings to support nutrition in their families for their children has gone from 176 families to, I believe, 280 was the number she shared with me the other day. That is almost double. Some of those families do attend Geyser and Division Street and live in the town of Milton. So I just wanted to provide that perspective. I understand that you have a job to do, and I don't envy you sitting out there trying to figure out a budget, but we do have families who are going through a serious financial crisis right now, to the point where we are delivering food to families in the town of Milton once a week so that they can provide proper nutrition to their families. So, the household budget crunch is real as well. And I just wanted to give that perspective, not on my behalf, but on behalf of the families, some of the families that I teach every day. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Shannon Doherty, Rock City Road. I would hope that when you get looking into this budget, that you don't try and balance your budget on the backs of these employees. I think that enough has gone on. You owe employees money for insurance that they were overpaid for their insurance. They haven't gotten their money back yet, but yet you get insurance money from the town, for you and your wife, and you're looking for a raise. For you, more than what you're willing to give the employees, you're also looking for a much larger raise for your secretary. So I would hope that when you take and look at the budget, you don't try and balance it on the back of the employees.
I'm a little confused too.
Let me say something.
The number is incorrect, okay? Whether,
What numbers is that?
Where are these numbers coming from?
Okay.
Wait, hold it. When I look at the, wait a minute, when I look at the salary schedule, I see 2% across the board.
Okay.
For Benny, for Terry, and I don't think it's fair that we,
Okay.
wait a minute, let me finish.
Okay.
I do not think it's fair that we point fingers at employees when the board is making decisions. We're not pointing fingers at every employee. We're pointing fingers at certain ones.
Okay, now,
Picking on certain
now I'll
ones.
say why. Because this young man who is working here,
Shannon, you have to go to the podium so people can hear you.
I want to see your sheet too.
Okay.
When you're finished.
here's what I'm gonna tell you. The salary that he has in there for Terry, okay, for the confidential secretary, is wrong. Because the 2020 budget amount was a salary for me, who had been here for 2 years. That is not Terry's salary. Hers was $20.08 multiplied by 2,080 hours, which is 41,000 and change, not 45,000. There's your first question answered. What's your next one, Barb?
I want to know where Benny's is.
Benny's?
Yeah.
2% the tentative, and then he added another 2% for the preliminary.
I didn't,
It's a slight budgetary error in the supervisor's personnel lines.
Oh, and we want to give him how much money?
Yeah, and we're gonna give him some more.
How much, pardon me?
And we want to pay him another $5,000?
And how much are we giving our town clerk?
I don't know.
Oh, that one we don't know. Same
Oh, I
amount,
can look at it.
same amount that David is getting.
Okay. I didn't say
Okay?
anything about that.
Let's look at all of them. And let's look at other employees that, on top of a 2% raise, some of our top employees are getting another 3% with a step raise, which gives them 5% this year. Let's analyze all of these before we start criticizing individual employees. That's all I'm asking. And let's make sure the numbers are right.
I wasn't criticizing. I saw the budget, I saw all these
let's
discrepancies,
do-
and that's where I brought it.
And I'll be happy to sit down with you and Dave, if I don't have all the numbers right, and we'll look at it, and I'm not even on the budget committee, but I'd like to get these salary numbers correct so the finger pointing stops. Okay? That's all I'm
I guess
asking.
I would just like to ask a question. Did anybody know, Mr. Comptroller, that you took the final number out of the tentative budget and moved it over to the preliminary for the supervisor and the secretary, and then added another 2%?
So at this juncture, I would like to emphasize that this is a preliminary budget. It can go up, down, left, right. I must have key punched a slight typo. It wouldn't have impacted the rate of pay of any person within that office. It was caught. I brought it to the board's attention. It was communicated transparently, and it will be rectified in the adopted version of this budget. Thank you.
Councilwoman Kerr, apparently this wasn't brought to her attention because she didn't know it.
Which one is that? The
Mine.
controller? Or
Benny's and Terry's.
I have to go look what I have in front of
To the tentative?
me. This is the, over
Look at the tentative, and then the final number in the tentative, they moved over to preliminary and added another 2%.
Dave did send out an email to board members.
but like I said, let's not point fingers at certain. Let's not point fingers at individuals, let's get it all right and go from there, because we're not, you're not talking everybody, you're pointing fingers at certain individuals, and there's other places that, there's things done in here too that should be correct.
I guess my biggest finger is pointing towards the person who created this budget that we want to give this huge raise to. If you're not competent enough to do this budget and do it properly, why would we offer somebody a 7.4% raise?
Annie, you gotta come to the microphone, please. I'm sorry, people
It's all right.
on Zoom can't hear you. I'm
That's
sorry.
That's my point. I mean, come on, if I go to work every day and don't do my job, you're gonna give me a raise?
Terry, I apologize to you because this is not your fault.
Shannon,
It's his.
Can I say something, Mr. Supervisor?
certainly.
I really wasn't gonna, I have some paperwork for the board and Dave. I didn't want to get into a big back and forth with salaries and everything. But over the weekend and over the last few days, I did go through the whole payroll section of our budget. And basically where I started at was last year's 2020 adopted, where we adopted in the organizational meeting, where we listed out everybody what they got paid for the year. I took that number and I ran it across, I multiplied it by the 2% we were giving everybody. And then I also took the time to add in their step raises, which a step raise, you don't pay the whole year's worth of step raise, you may only pay 3 or 4 months. I got it all in a spreadsheet for everybody to look at. There are quite a few math errors in this budget, that's what I'm calling them. We seem to over budgeted in that amount about $28,000. I wouldn't necessarily call them raises for everybody. I'm just saying that along the line, and that's why I didn't want to get in a big public row over it all. I just looked at the positions. You'll notice in my spreadsheet, I don't have a name, I have the positions. And that includes the highway, everybody. I didn't bother to do the summer program, I can be honest with that. But I looked at the people that really are affected by this, and there are not just, and I don't want Terry or Dave, Brenda, I don't want to be pointing the fingers at them, but there are people, other people in the town also that seem to show a bigger increase than the 2% for next year. And I think once you get it, it's a quite lengthy page, but it may help clarify some of this. I really think that we need to look at all these raises, and I don't necessarily, when I look at the whole budget, and I may disagree with you a little bit on it, Barb, when I'm looking at Brenda's increase, Brenda really didn't ask for a raise as much as said that I am willing to work more hours if I'm compensated for it. Essentially, what we had when we started was our former town clerk worked about 10 hours a week. What I did is I looked at what we would consider a full-time salary for Brenda, and I broke that out to what that would relate to per hour. So if I take her last year's $34,747 and I divide it by that rate per hour, she is right now working about 25 hours a week. If we took and added in the 5,200, which the board had looked at, that would add about another 4 hours a week. I know people like to call the raise, but you are receiving something back for the expended money, because she will be working more hours.
And Brenda was the first one to tell us. She ran, well, we told her she ran for a position at 34,000 something last year, and I think Anna can agree to that. Ran for an elected position. She was also the first one to tell us that she does not have to work 40 hours. She can work whatever she wants. as an elected official, okay?
I don't-
And I agree, she has put way more hours than our previous clerk, and we wanted to compensate her for that.
And I don't disagree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just trying to put it in some,
But no one questioned why we were doing that.
I understand that.
Okay.
And I'm not questioning why we did that. I'm just trying to put it in some perspective here of what all these numbers mean. And I certainly will share all these papers with you tonight. I did it for a very selfish reason, because as everybody knows, I am a big proponent of making the pay scales fair for everybody here. I brought up about how we are paying $15 an hour to our part-time workers. And what I did when I looked at that whole payroll and I said, well, we've over budgeted $28,000. How does that relate to if we raised up the part-time and started to get some equality?
And I think and I appreciate the work you're doing.
Can I finish saying what I'm?
Yeah, go ahead, but I appreciate the work you're doing. But I think something that's lacking with this board is, instead of sitting here and waiting for this public hearing on this budget, is that we're not sitting together discussing it and discussing it with our controller and saying, why are these errors in here, instead of pointing fingers.
I'm not
That's
pointing
my-
fingers at
That's
you.
my issue. Well, but yeah, but you're sitting there saying you've made a $28,000 error in public. Let's correct it.
And I
get
can't
moving.
disagree with you more about how we haven't communicated together as a board. And I was very frustrated sitting on the budget committee. We had 2 meetings together as a budget committee, and then the next meetings the budget committee got split up. So the very first meeting, it was you, Benny, Sharon, and Dave. The second meeting, it was Mike. And the third meeting was Jim and I. So we didn't really sit and discuss it as everything. And I felt bad about that, because I felt that the budget committee really wasn't having input into this budget.
You know, I want to disagree.
And wait a minute, let me say something. And Friday, Benny asked me to sit in on a budget committee meeting, because was it Friday? Was it Friday?
Yeah.
Monday? Okay, I'm sorry. Monday, he asked me to sit on a budget committee meeting because he had an appointment and you didn't show up. I had the budget committee here, me and Sharon and Jim Fry, and you weren't here.
That's correct, I
So
was
where's
not here.
But they said you wanted that meeting.
I did.
So what happened?
Well, to be
Where's
quite
the
honest with you,
miscommunication?
there was no miscommunication. I had a project Monday morning that should have taken about 4 hours to complete. I'd still have to earn a living. And unfortunately, it took 8 hours to complete. So unless you want to really increase my pay, I would appreciate it that you would understand that there are times when I get tied up in an emergency that I cannot make a meeting.
And again, it comes back to communicate that, because I would have canceled the meeting. I was just sitting and taking notes for Benny. So just communication, and I think that's where this board lacks, you know, is communication. And like I said, instead of going around talking about it and running to the attorney and talking behind people's backs, let's go directly to the sources. And if there's a problem with this budget and you find a problem or I find a problem, go to Dave and speak to him directly. That's what he's here for.
I have spoken to Dave directly. I speak to Dave a lot of times. I find it, to be honest with you, I find it quite refreshing. We are discussing something in an open meeting tonight. We talk about openness, and I'm not at all afraid to discuss anything in an open meeting. I think that's the fair thing to do.
But I'd rather have, just like the people are criticizing,
Hang on just a second,
I'd rather have the correct facts in front of me than talking about incorrect facts. And people talking about incorrect facts. Or, you know, let's have the right numbers here. If you've got them, they should have been shared.
I
And
just
that's all I'm saying.
said I finished them this
I'm finished.
afternoon.
I'm done.
Okay, I have one more person who'd like to speak.
Danny.
Hi Sharon, go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to clear up the Friday meeting where Jim and I showed up, and I don't think we were very good about communicating to Mike that we were going to meet on Friday either. I think we all dropped the ball on that. But I do want to say that it wasn't the most productive meeting because John wasn't there and frankly you weren't there. But I think the committee had a lot of positive input in it. I remember the meeting that I had requested to sit down and go over numbers because I wanted to make sure I understood in particular the fund balances. And that's why I sat with you, Dave, Barb was there, John was there. I didn't include Mike or Jen in that meeting because I thought they had a full understanding of what was happening and maybe I didn't. And that's why I wanted to meet with you guys that day. And then I understood that the next day you met with Jen, and the day after that you met with Mike. So I'm glad everybody got to sit down with you individually because that really made a difference in my understanding of the process, and I hope it did with them as well. Very complicated. The budget process is very, very complicated, as I know you're aware. I will say that I thought everybody worked really hard on it. I know that we all studied and prepared. I want to thank John Foley for helping us guide us through a lot of things that we didn't know, and certainly Dave Kramer, who has a wealth of knowledge as far as when you go. But I just want you to know that we took a lot of time to dissect that budget line by line. Maybe not very popular about certain things, but I think that the board fully understands the budget process. Someone said that evaluation, and I have to agree with that. I know I think that we know these numbers inside out. So everybody's trying to do the right thing to keep the numbers down, keep people employed, which is paramount in this economic climate that we're in. I think that we need to be grateful for the job that we have and the leadership that we have. So that said, I still think that there are some cuts that could be made. And I know it's in payroll. Payroll is the biggest piece of the market. And it's just true of every municipality, not just the public buildings. But every municipality has the same issue with payroll is being the biggest portion. So that's the biggest place. That's where you look to cut. So happens. We did look at some machinery costs in the highway department too, so they have a lot of money in their reserves that they can, if they really need something, they can get it. They're not going to go without. I think this is a much wealthier community than I anticipated. We're in much better shape than most, and I feel very good about that. So that's why I'm not for the tax increase. I'm not. I think that we're in fine enough shape right now. But I just wanted to interject that I was pleased to be a part of it. I appreciate being there, and I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Just as a quick one, Betty, I want to clear up, I was not at that Friday meeting, because if I was, we would have had 3 board members here.
Right.
So I didn't want everybody to think we had 3 board members in a meeting.
Yep. Okay, anyone else? Sure, Jason.
Raises, we seem to be talking a lot about that. I just wanted to express, first of all, our crew, Dave and I, we have the best crew you could get. Our highway guys are unbelievable, but I just wanted to make sure that we, as the highway department, did acknowledge the situation that we're in, the entire world for that matter, much less our country and our town. The highway department's request was to Betty and Dave. We felt that, truthfully, even though I just said they are great, we did not request a raise for the highway department. Said if there was an across-the-board small cost of living, we'd like the guys to get it. But there was 0 requests for a raise for the highway department.
Yeah, you're correct, Jason. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you. Anyone else?
Betty, can I just add one more thing?
Is it a budget statement?
It is.
Please do.
Thank you.
Councilman Furlish, you get a lot of heat up there because you,
Becky,
oh, sorry.
it's okay.
Councilman Furlish, you get a lot of heat up there all the time because you speak your mind and you speak from your heart, and I completely respect that, and I thank you for that. Barb, I think what Mr. Furlish was trying to do in comparing Dave's increase to Brenda's, you can't compare the two. Brenda is giving something back, where Dave, who came on at, I think, 70,000 around there, whatever, he's working the same amount of
$1,000 in change for next year. So how much can we do with $38,000? That's right, we can't.
What do we want to do here? You're going to make, somebody want to make a motion, or you're going to drop this and let's move on to the budget? Do you think?
I'll entertain a motion if someone wants to make it. If no one wants to make the motion, we'll move on to the budget hearing. Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearing for the budget. If anybody would like to speak about the budget, raise your hand, either on Zoom or in person. Oh, I'm sorry. Take a deep breath.
This was in the paper on the 30th, October 30th. Please take note that the preliminary budget of the town of Milton for the year 2021 has been filed in the office of the clerk of the town of Milton, and the town board of said town will conduct a public hearing on the 5th day of November 2020 at 7:10 p.m. at the Town of Milton Community Center located at 310 North Line Road in said town. With said hearing thereupon, review said budget, and any person may be heard in favor of or against budget as compiled, or for or against any items therein contained. A copy will be available for the at the town clerk's office for inspection during normal business hours. The budget is also available on the Town of Milton's website. The proposed salaries for each member of the town board and supervisor, the town clerk, superintendent of highways, town justice, and receiver of taxes, therefore set forth are as follows. Supervisor, $50,139. Councilwoman, $11,807. Councilman, $11,807. Councilman, $11,807. Councilman, $11,807. Town clerk, $39,927. Superintendent of highways, $70,721. Town justice, $21,097. Town justice, $21,097. Receiver of taxes, $24,290. By order of the town board of the town of Milton. Thank you.
Anyone? Deanna?
Supervisor, I would just urge you to go back and review what you just said, because it makes a lot of sense. There are people that are out there, they are hurting.
You okay?
I just got something.
Just want me to need it.
They're hurting. So how do you think it looks to the taxpayers when they are out there and they can't buy groceries and you're giving yourself a 4% raise? You're giving other people $5,200 raises. How does that look to the taxpayers? Yes, there are people hurting. We are in trouble here. We don't know how long this pandemic's going to go. Please just go back and review what you just said. It was inspirational, Benny. Go back and look at it, and then reevaluate what you guys are doing up here. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
As a citizen, it shouldn't have to be my job to get a copy of the budget and go over item by item to figure out what the town board is doing. Typically, in the past, this town board, a long time ago, as well as many other town boards in the county, give a budget report and budget recap prior to the release of the new budget, telling the people what to expect, what you are doing, money that you're going to anticipate spending for expenditures that have not been around in the past, and anything that has to do with raises for employees, for additional highway equipment, whatever it may be. You didn't give us a recap. The citizens deserve a recap to know what the town board is planning on doing. We shouldn't have to go through item by item on this thing. My understanding that there's going to be a tax increase. Now, the amount of the tax increase is small, potentially insignificant. It's not the point. The point is that we are in a situation right now where millions of people have been put out of work. The economy started to come back only because Trump encouraged the governors to open up the economies. But we are in New York where we have a governor that is a Democrat, unfortunately, and he's playing his political games, keeping a lot of things shut down. We have a loss of sales tax revenues from all these places being shut down. Nothing was spoken about the amount of sales tax revenues that we lost in this past year. Nothing has been said about what we are anticipating in terms of upcoming sales tax revenues or lack of upcoming sales tax revenues. How is that fitting into everything? We know that we are not going to have the same sales tax revenues that we've had in the past. That's a given. That's a given. You can't tell me that the town of Milton has not been affected by lack of sales tax revenues. It had to be. It had to be. Just like it's going to be affected in the future.
If I could stop here just a second, John. Our sales tax revenue for the year is actually...
I'm sorry, can you speak into the...
I'm sorry. Our sales tax revenue for this year is actually up 2% due to the fact that we had more building and our assessed value of the town went up, so our piece of the county pie got a little bit bigger, and when our piece of the pie got a little bit bigger, then that's what happened. Our piece of the pie got bigger. We're actually up 2% for the year in sales tax for this year. I think I've tried to give reports when I got them, the board has them. I think I've even said it a couple times at board meetings that we're up about, that's not a huge number, but we're up 2%. Compared to communities that are down 10, 15%, we're ahead of the game.
Okay.
Hours, whereas Brenda says, is coming in and saying, I want to do more for the town. And I think it is pretty obvious to everybody on this board how much work Brenda has done. So to compare Brenda's situation with Dave's situation, I don't think is actually accurate. And I want to quote you, because, and I went back and I listened to everything you said. You said, we have to be fair to all of our other employees too. When you jump 2 or 3 of them up, what do you do with the rest of them? Those were your words. Now, his $5,200 for a new employee, couldn't you give that to our part-time employees who, on this board, you guys said we have to do something about the inequities of our part-time employees bringing somebody in at $19 an hour. Nothing is for them in the budget. There's not. There's no raise to $19 an hour, and there's no. And some people have the conception that if you're in finance, you deserve more money. Well, one of our part-time clerks in the court worked over 22 years in finance for the state. And she's at 15-something an hour. So it's just, know what you say and follow it. And one other point I want to make too, and this is to protect you guys on this town board. If you guys cut paving altogether and you do not pave Rollins Hollow 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the step is next year, you guys are going to be hunted down because those people are fierce and they call and ask me every day. Thank you.
I just want to address something. And I wasn't in on the discussion, I kind of heard it secondhand, that I think the budget committee was talking about reevaluating those part-time jobs and grading them. I just feel that right now, we're so far into this budget, we can't do that right now. And I'm all for starting after the first of the year. I honestly don't know who's gonna do it, who has the expertise to do it. We may have to go to the county to get advice on how to do that. But start looking at experience and training and so on, and then reevaluate those positions. And I think that's the fair way to do it. I don't think right now, sitting here and saying, okay, we're gonna just jump everybody across the board up to $19 or $20 an hour. I don't think that's the fair way to do it. So, but I'm all for, I understand what everybody's saying, and I'm all for looking at those positions and deciding where the raises should go. And I think we also have to look at our pay scale, which was the county pay scale from, I think, 25 years ago or something, and how jobs, I'm looking at Anna because she well knows how, positions are graded.
Just to let you know, Barb, I also included the part-time, what it would be if it was comparable, because what the budget committee had talked about was essentially if you have a person like a part-time court clerk versus a full-time court clerk, their duties are the same, basically. So I took the full-time starting rate and applied that to the part-timer. That gives you one set of numbers. The second set of numbers was, everybody had talked about $19 an hour. So I added $19 an hour, gave you another set of numbers, and I gave you the set of numbers that we are actually budgeted for this year, so that you'll have an idea of what each of these would cost us. And I agree with you.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think we disagree.
I think we need to look at some type of scale, get something out of the county, how they do it, where they bring people in. And I found something very interesting. Town of Milton is advertising for 2 part-time positions at $15.23 an hour. So we're really not that far off on some of these positions.
So what was the position?
Well, yeah, the positions, one of the positions was buildings and grounds. We bring our buildings and grounds people in at 22 something, Benny?
Actually, it's
2008.
2008.
So, everybody seems to be across the board.
I don't disagree with that.
So
That's why I did those numbers for you.
That should be a priority.
The first one actually came right from our salary schedule.
Yeah, but I mean, that should be our priority, is let's get this straightened out.
Anyone else? Okay, I need a...
We have some questions.
Yep, I got them. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to read. Why didn't Barb request a meeting with the entire board and the comptroller? Did she identify any errors in the budget other than the 2% increase on the stipends? The reason we can't have the entire board meet with the comptroller is because that would be a meeting. So that's one of the reasons that all 5 of us can't meet at one time with the controller. Second question from an anonymous attendee. I don't know how that person got in, because you're supposed to register and have a name. So I'm not going to read that question because that person didn't follow protocol. Next question is from Frank Rossi. Says, Benny, once public comment is over, it's clear there will be changes to the budget. Can you please explain in detail with Jim what's next, what the timing is, and will the public get another opportunity to speak at that time? So right now I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Does anyone else have anything?
Just a quick question, if we close the public hearing, we can't set another public hearing, correct?
To be honest with you, I don't really have the time. You have to pass your final budget by the 20th of this month.
Okay.
I think you have it down. We have, what, 1 meeting between now and then? To answer your question, yeah, you could, but generally you wouldn't for protocol. You'd have your public hearing, you'd make whatever changes, usually cuts, and then you would pass. 20th of November.
Our budget has to be passed by the 20th, and our next meeting is our next regularly scheduled meeting is next Wednesday, but as that's Veterans Day, we're pushing it back a day to the 12th.
Keep it open till then.
What's that?
Keep it open. If John's concerned, you can just keep it open to the next meeting. Right, you know?
I mean, that's fine, that'll give us, we can make our adjustments, make our corrections. It would be our adopted or pretty close to final budget. The public can weigh in on it, and if the board needs to make any changes or feels they need to make changes, then we can sit here till midnight on the 12th and make those changes. So we want to leave the public hearing open. Is the board, a consensus on leaving the public hearing open for a week?
Ben, can I just add to that? If, that's perfectly fine for you to do. However, you need to get those changes out to the public so that they know what to comment on.
Correct.
Well, then everybody's homework for the weekend is to have comments and changes in by, I would guess, close of business on Monday. And that'll give Dave time to print things up, or Dave and Brenda can get together and print things up on Tuesday. We'll put it up online Tuesday, sometime Tuesday. And, yeah, I'm saying, sometime Tuesday. And then that'll give the public 3 days before our 7:30 meeting on the 12th.
Tuesday, got Wednesday and Thursday meeting.
So you got Wednesday and Thursday. All right, so we'll leave the public hearing open. We need a motion to leave the public hearing open, okay?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, sorry, Brenda.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalapnik.
Yes, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for coming, everyone. Have a good weekend. See you next Thursday.